It's all about the journey, enjoying the journey. And when I think of the next guest, I think of when she's on the stage and after stage, she's just always having a great time. She's truly embracing the whole experience before and after, and she is an example of enjoying the journey. So today we have the 2021 Chicago Pro Champion, Sheena Ohlig.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yeah, thank you for being here. Like, girl, I mean, really seriously, you have so much energy. You really do.
It's the Gemini in me. Maybe that's it. You know, it's Gemini season. We just got out of Mercury retrograde.
Totally.
It could be a little of all that.
Yeah. Right? And we were just having that little conversation. We were talking about what Tina Turner and like your energy.
Dancing. Would you like to demonstrate? Let's see.
Absolutely. I got to preserve the energy.
Yes.
Right? Preserve the energy. But no, I do love to dance. That is probably one of my, even though I have zero choreography, like experience, and like I would never get on stage and dance. And that's probably one of my least favorite parts of competing is the posing routine. It's so crazy.
No, it's hard to believe. It's shocking.
Dancing. Like I love moving. I'm in the gym. People have caught me plenty of times in the gym and have like posted me on Instagram like, here she goes again, and I'm like in the middle of sets dancing,
getting down to the music.
It's definitely a way to process, you know, the energy for sure.
Yeah, well, you're just really an example of like it's an inside job. Like, you know, it's just you're like carefree, and a lot of times we'll deal with the athletes and they're so uptight and but you
so
found
serious.
a way, and you have the same energy that I see in fitness. Yeah, you guys are like,
hey, we're always taking more girls.
Sure, but see, I could never do the things that you guys do. Like my shoulders would pop off. I would lose a couple of vertebrae. I just couldn't. I'll leave that to you fitness girls for sure.
Hey, well, whatever you're doing is working because you're killing it in the sport, and obviously, like your journey has been completely interesting. You obviously were an athlete growing up, a very like established, a successful athlete. Tell us about your journey through track.
Through track. So one of my first memories ever as a child is running around the track with my dad. And I tell people I'm a lifelong athlete, and not necessarily that it was all organized sport, but, you know, climbing the monkey bars and, you know, seeing how high I could swing the swing or slide down the slide quicker than anybody else. So competition is sort of just innately in me, and never really to like beat somebody else, but really to push myself, you know. And I feel like I've been that way since I was a little kid, running along with the boys. You know, I'm like this little girl, hair's all crazy, and I'm like playing with the boys, sliding down the, you know, the hill or climbing trees. And I think it was just that adventurousness in me. And my mom and my dad, they always cultivated that in us to explore and, you know, don't be afraid to do anything or try anything. So I think I owe that to them. But once I got into middle school is when I started organized sports, and, you know, basketball, track was a thing. And by the time I got to high school, track really was that calling card. It was where I really excelled. And even though, you know, we did well in basketball and track was where I knew I'd be able to earn that track scholarship, that college scholarship, because that was really the goal of mine, you know, coming from the area that I came from. You know, it was an impoverished town. It was, you know, dysfunctional households, but we as a community, we were always there for each other. We lifted each other up. I'm from Camden, New Jersey. So if anybody has done their research about Camden, you know, at a time, you know, we were at the top of the list for like most dangerous city or, you know, and that's a blight on the city, but the people themselves and we as a community, we were always just really supportive of one another. And
that's pretty amazing.
It was really great to be able to go to a school where we all knew each other and we knew each other's families and things like that. And my coaches, they just said, like, if you are really serious about this, you've got to dig in. You know, you've got to dig in and look at your future goals, which at the time in high school, it was always just about being in the present.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
just
Right.
what's fun.
Right.
Right.
But I knew that like my parents couldn't afford to send me to college and pay for college for me, so I knew the only way to get out of the hood, to
Right.
get out
This was
of
your shot.
poverty, was to do really well in sports, and I did that. And I'm grateful that it gave me the opportunity to get out and explore other places. I went to the University of Memphis, which is in Tennessee.
A full 4 year,
ride, full scholarship.
full scholarship, which is
Grateful.
awesome.
And it just gave me an opportunity to see other parts of the world. I came to Arizona for my first time when I was in college.
Okay.
And crazy story, you guys are probably, don't at me, okay? I know this is silly, but don't at me. I'm in Arizona for the first time ever in my life. I'm a freshman. We come out to Arizona. It's one of the first, far out of the state sort of track meets that we had. And we're driving along the highway, and obviously we're out here in the desert, so there are a lot of mountains that you see. I had never seen a mountain before.
Right.
So
Oh,
we're driving
wow.
we're driving in our van, like the team. And I'm like, oh my God, look at that big hill. Look at that big hill over
And they're
there.
like, no.
And they're like, Sheena, my coach, like, Sheena, that is a mountain. What is a mountain? I'm like, oh, I didn't know. Like, I truly didn't know. And it just goes to show you that, unfortunately, we have so many young people that just never get an opportunity to be exposed to things in the world, things in our country, things, that they're not used to, being from a small town or a small city or an impoverished area. So I was just really grateful that I had that opportunity.
I really identify with that story, coming from Detroit, and my first opportunity going down to college, and then it's like, for me, it was just a learning experience, interacting with others. My first time, because Detroit is predominantly black, and now I'm at a university is predominantly white, and it was just a great experience. So and I look at the whole bodybuilding, our industry, because it goes so deep. It's
totally
international.
Absolutely.
People don't really know that and realize that.
It definitely. I think if you're not prepared for that, and I think if you're very closed off, it can be
too sheltered.
It can be mind blowing. It can be sort of jarring. But thankfully, my schools were pretty well mixed. I did go to a PWI, predominantly white institution in college, but there were a lot of students or commuting students or people of color on campus. So we did get a good mix of people, and people from out of state, people from overseas, people from around the world. A lot of the people on my track team were, where were they from? They were from, all over. You had people from Spain, you had people from Hungary, you had people from Jamaica, from, just all over. So it was really great.
And that was a thought of, with track and field and that experience. And so a lot of times you look at our industry, it's not bodybuilders okay, I got a full ride for bodybuilding for 4 years in college. And a lot of times they go straight from high school into weight training and missing that experience. So do you look at that as it was an advantage for you because you spent that 4 years at university?
I absolutely think
so. And then going in now into bodybuilding, what are the advantages?
I absolutely think so. I think namely because I learned a lot when it came to training and training strategically, training for a purpose, not just going in and exercising and doing a couple of moves. The track team typically trained with the football team.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah.
You have a bunch of skinny mini string bean girls who are used to running 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters, but some of the the field girls were in there too, and we're sitting there squatting with the football team and deadlifting with the football team, and we just learned that intensity and that training sort of theology, and I ate it up. To be honest, I ate it up. I really owe my bodybuilding, advantages to my high school strength training coach. He was an Olympian. He was an Olympic level athletic trainer.
Oh, wow.
And he just taught me so much. And from the ground up, I started squatting with a broomstick. Because he was, he was just a stickler for form. It was we're going to get the form right first because the strength and the power will come, the weight will come. And, you know, it's just over the years that sort of was just embedded into me, and, you know, it kind of grew and developed. And the experience that I learned through college and then after college, just, you know, staying with the training, it carried over onto stage, I think. Just, you know, my background in athletics, you know, jumping the hurdles, doing jumping exercises and doing powerful exercises, explosive plyometric exercises, gave me the musculature that I have today, or set the foundation even for what I have today. So I'm grateful for that, and I think that it definitely carried over, because when I first started, I started in figure. And right off the jump.
Yeah, and I saw that, because you told me you competed in, what, three NPC figure?
3 NPC figure shows, and I did well enough. But, you know, I think any true competitor, you want to win. So the feedback that I got from the judges was always that I was just, you know, too muscular for that division. And that was the year that they were bringing out women's physique. So they told me right off the bat, women's physique is going to be your category. That's where you're going to best fit. So even though I did well in figure, I think that, you know, because of my experience in athletics and the type of movements that I was doing, it just made me a better fit for the bigger divisions.
So let me ask you this. So if you love dancing, but you don't like having to perform on stage, when they threw out women's physique at you, were you thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be a whole new level of performance? Did it make you nervous?
It made me so nervous. My very first show, where I did, like, you know, a physique, you know, or posing routine. I'm so glad we didn't really have, like, camera phones then, and, like, social media wasn't really big then.
I bet there's probably some footage.
We're not going to ask for anybody to send in any footage. We're going to leave that one. We're going to let that one sleep. But it was a great experience. You know what I mean? What I did respect about it was the history of it. You know, sort of just like everything that goes into those mandatory poses, you know, the quarter turns, sort of understanding how to show off your body. And even though I don't necessarily enjoy it the most, I like to think that I had the ability to switch on, like, that alter ego. So, you know, you get on stage and then it's what it's about. You do what you got to do. So I take everything as it comes, and I enjoy every part of it, for sure.
So what did your physique look like before your first competition as a track athlete? Were you did you have like that strong upper body where you could see the shoulders and the separation in triceps and biceps, or were you just like...
Let me think. I mean, if I had to categorize it, I would say I was definitely more bottom heavy, and that my legs were sort of always responded to the training because of my history with hurdles. My upper body wasn't necessarily so muscular, but it did respond really well to the training once I knew what I had to do to bring up the areas where, you know, I was getting feedback on. And my core was always conditioned because of, you know, the track and field history. So I actually have some old pictures of my very, very first competition. And I have the abs and I have the legs, and then I have these like scrawny stringing arms. I'm like, what is that even? I don't even recognize that person. Like, that's it's just a different person. So it's just funny to look back and say, wow, like, this is what my body looked like before I had a strategic training, you know, plan. And then to see it evolve into what it is today, and where it's progressed today with people in my corner who know what they're doing and can give me honest feedback and, you know, sort of guide me in the right direction. So I'm grateful for the whole experience.
And then with the training, when you're training, like you said, with the weight training and learning from your coach and preparing to be better at performance, like better at what you're doing in track and field, that's different from what we do in our sport, where it's like it's a science of the body, and it's not about performance.
That's right.
So how did you make that adjustment from that mindset, right? Because what you do is hard, it's challenging. You've got the discipline, the willpower to do all of that. Now you have to shift gears and really kind of understand, like, because there's a difference between nutrition for performance, difference between training for the physique or performance.
That's
so
right.
Explain that.
Sure. So definitely two different lanes, right? So I think the biggest thing to understand with bodybuilding, like you said, it's not necessarily a performance. Yes, you perform to achieve the body and the physique that you want, but when you're up on stage on the day that it really counts, it is very subjective in the judging criteria. It's not an objective, oh, well, her shoulders are wider than her shoulders. No one's coming up to tape measure your shoulders or your waist or, you know, how much can you squat. Right.
Nobody cares.
So there's a level of, you have to embrace that part and sort of, you know, release what you can't control, right? It's control what you can control, let go what you can't control, right? So there's a mindset that goes into that. And that's a big shift from being able to control my performance, being able to run faster, being able to start quicker, being able to clear the hurdles, you know, more efficiently. So there was a big shift there. But because I was always an athlete and I was always coachable, and I think I respected that most about being an athlete, is just being coachable. And my coaches always sort of ingrained that in us. Like, can you be coachable? If you can be coachable, then things can change. But if you're that person that just wants to control everything and, you know, you just want it your way and you think that it's black and white, it's going to be really difficult to progress. So that shift in that mindset, I think, gave me an edge because I was able to control what I can control, the diet, the training, the sleep, making sure that, you know, I'm getting my cardio in, making sure I'm not, you know, overindulging in the cheat meals and things like that. Because those are the tangibles, right? Those are the tangibles. But then the intangibles are what the judges see and how they perceive you on stage next to who else shows up. You can't control who else shows up on stage that day. You really can only bring your best self. And there's a level of freedom, I think. There's I don't know, there's a level of just, okay, there's a stress-free feeling in knowing that I've done everything that I can do, and anything else that I can't control, I'm not going to stress over it. So there's some liberation there, but I think some people take it the other way and they stress more over that
for sure
than what they can control, and it winds up backfiring on them, and it can send you into a complete tailspin. So being able to make that shift, I think, happened solely because of my mindset, knowing that I was coachable, you know, or wanting to be coachable, and then letting go of what I couldn't control, you know, because then you can really enjoy the experience on the stage.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break and come back with Sheena Ohlig and now pick up on her bodybuilding career. We'll be back. And we are back with Sheena Ohlig, and let's start talking about like your, let's go back to the 2011, 2012. When you discovered and you actually turned pro in 2012.
Yes, Junior USAs.
Junior USAs. And I don't think the audience that they know that really you started in women's physique in the beginning, when it first started. So you're the second woman to win the Junior USA Women's Physique.
Yes.
The first was
Dana Lynn
Bailey.
No name,
right.
DLB.
No need.
Right, so you're there in the beginning.
Sure.
And so
That's
let's talk about like that that journey and that beginning?
That was definitely a journey. Like I mentioned earlier, starting in figure, just because that was, the new division that most, women were going about, because at that point it was fitness, figure, or women's bodybuilding.
Right.
I wasn't a fitness girl. It just wasn't happening.
Nope.
And I didn't believe that I had the size or the physique to match up with women's bodybuilding.
I understand.
And I wasn't even sure that that's what I wanted.
I understand.
So figure was like the big new thing, and you didn't have to do a posing routine. You didn't have to do a routine like, a choreographed routine. And it was just those quarter turns. And I thought this was really, I could do this. And so when I competed, and the feedback was just that I was more muscular than they were going for that division, to go into women's physique, I ate it up, to be honest. Like I knew that I was gonna have to do a posing routine, but that wasn't something that deterred me. I just said, well, if that's gonna get me a first place, like I wanted to win. I'm like a champion at heart. I'm just competitive.
Yes.
And you seem like you like a challenge.
I do love a challenge. And I'm gonna tell you why specifically I did women's physique.
Okay.
The coach that I wound up picking up a coach probably for like my second or third figure show. And he was a great guy. I learned a lot from him. But when I said that I wanted to do women's physique, that I was considering switching over to women's physique, he said, I quote, "That's not a good idea. They'll chew you up and spit you out. They'll eat you alive."
Yeah. Really?
All bets were off at that point.
Yeah, you're like, that just lit my fire.
That lit everything inside me. I fired him as a coach. I did my own prep, and it made it all the more worth it when I wound up going to the New York Met and winning my first women's physique show, winning the overall, and getting a little earful from Steve Weinberger talking about how well, I represented that division. So I got a lot of encouragement, and it just gave me the green light to do that national show. So when I did Junior USA's, all bets were off, and I just went really just wanting to have a good experience, see how I stacked up against the other girls. I really honestly didn't go with any expectation to win. I mean, I think as competitors we want to win, and you go preparing to win, but I think my mindset was win, lose, or draw. I want to see how I stack up. And to be called out for first in that high class, because I think they did two high classes. They did short and they did tall. So for me to take the win in that tall height class amongst all the girls that showed up, and it was a big class. It was a big class. It just solidified everything, like for believing in myself, for not being swayed by other people's negativity. And, for just, I don't know, owning up to a challenge or taking a challenge head on. So that was an amazing thing. And then to know that I was the second women's physique pro after Dana Lynn Bailey, what?
Right, because it was so new then, right?
It was so new.
And you didn't really see a lot of the shows, and they've been talking about women's physique coming on the scene, and but it just evolved, and it's so
and it gave us. I think it gave us a great platform. I think for women's divisions in general, like obviously women's bodybuilding, they laid the foundation. Like women's bodybuilding are the trailblazer division. But I think that it's a good thing that we do have different divisions because there are so many different body types for women, and I think that it validates everyone's, athletic ability or body ability, because not everybody can put on 20, 30 pounds of muscle.
Right.
Not everybody can be shredded. Not everybody can do the flips and the arm stands. And, I think that it just gives you an opportunity to display your abilities, and I think that's a great thing.
Because there's so much interest in our sport.
100%.
So it's like, gosh, that would be tough. You wanted to compete so bad, but you just didn't fit in any category.
That's right.
So now we have bikini, we have
wellness, fitness.
Like we're gonna have 30 divisions soon.
I think it's awesome. It's just so many opportunities. So then you decided to, so let's go, you took like a 4-year break, right?
Unfortunately, there was a little 4-year hiatus.
Before you transitioned into women's bodybuilding,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So
I only made the transition to women's bodybuilding 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I'll be excited to talk about that, because you had a big role in that, and I'm excited to share that. But I did a couple of pro shows. So I won Junior USA's in 2012 and took the rest of that year to like prep and, figure things out. So 2013 was my first pro show and I didn't do great.
Yeah.
But I think that it was a learning experience. I think that it gave me a wake-up call. You can't do the same thing that you did as an amateur in the pro leagues.
Yes.
You got to step it up a notch. You got to tap on the shoulders of people who know what they're doing. And it just gave me a wake-up call. So I did do a couple of pro shows between 2013 and 2014. But by that point, my body had just been so beaten up. I was born with hip dysplasia, bilateral hip dysplasia. So if you're not familiar with what that is, it's just a shallowness of the pelvis or the hip socket. So the femur bone, the head of the femur, doesn't really have a deep dish or a cup to sit in. So it should be a ball and cup socket.
Right.
Mine was like a dish. So my hip socket would slide around and dislocate.
Wow.
I
Did you
dislocated.
experience that a lot through track?
Well, yeah, like I actually dislocated my hip twice in track.
Oh, wow.
And track and basketball. So once in high school and once in college. But nobody diagnosed it. It wasn't a very popular diagnosis. They didn't really know what was going on. People told me I was crazy. The doctor said, you didn't dislocate your hip. You're too young to have that happen.
I see, right.
I'm like, I felt that
Something happened.
I know.
I'm pretty sure that's not normal.
Wow.
Long story short, thankfully, a yoga client of mine, her husband was a back specialist, like a orthopedic back specialist. And he was able to look at my back. He said, your back is fine because I've been complaining of back pain.
Sure.
But your hips, something's wrong with what's the structure. Something's up. So he referred me to his partner. They diagnosed me with hip dysplasia, told me where I could go, to address it. And I decided to have the surgery. So the surgery was a very invasive surgery. They break your pelvis in 3 places. They pin you together. They screw you together. So I was out for a long time just getting the ability to walk properly back. And so that took me off of the circuit for about 4 years. And it wasn't until 2019 that I felt I had enough strength in me and the will and the belief in myself again, to do it. And that's when I matched up with Trey Hodge, my current coach now. And we've been on fire ever since, to be honest. I mean, I think that I had the best comeback for me.
Yes.
I couldn't have written it any better. And so I'm really excited that we were able to get into a couple of shows. We did a couple of physique shows. And it was just fate. I think that it was just meant to be that women's bodybuilding was going to be my real home for how my body was responding to the training. And after I want to say it was Chicago. I did Chicago Pro.
Yeah. You
in
did
2020.
That's right.
And we had been preparing to do women's physique there at the Chicago Pro. And my coach said, listen, why don't we jump up into women's bodybuilding, give it a go.
So he said it at the show.
3 days before the show.
3 days. So you're now learning a whole new posing.
3 days before the show. Yeah. So thankfully, he also coaches Monique Jones. And, Mo Jones, she's firehouse.
Yes, fire.
That's it. She was able to help me do the poses, tweak a few things, and kind of get me prepared as much as possible in that short period of time. Wow. And to be honest, I couldn't have been any more happy with the outcome. I think I placed 9th at that show, so I was just outside of the top 5.
Impressive.
The crazy thing is this. I'm going to share this, and hopefully I'm not talking too much. Okay?
No, honey, go.
So my win last year was just, I don't know, it was magnified because of the experience that I had the year prior at the Chicago Pro. I prepped for it I went into it prepping for women's physique, switched to women's bodybuilding 3 days prior, do women's bodybuilding. I get on stage with the girls and I'm like, over dieted, over depleted, just, stringy. You put any women's physique girl next to a full body women's bodybuilding competitor, you're going to see the difference.
Right.
So when we were making the first call outs, Steve Weinberger's the head judge. He calls me out in the top 5, right?
Yeah.
I'm out and I get that first call out.
You're like,
by Steve.
Steve, right? So I'm standing up there. I'm like, okay, we're doing something. By the time he finishes calling the rest, I think he called out 6 or 7 girls actually. By the time he calls out the rest of the girls, I was the first or second person he called out. He says, 109, step back in line.
Oh
So, for a minute, for a brief second there, I was like, I'm in the top 5, I'm in the top 6 of women's bodybuilding.
no. Yeah.
Yes.
This is it. And then he sends me back in line. So I'm like, okay, all right.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Fast forward, the wrap up between prejudging and finals, and I saw Miss Olympia, Linda Murray, and Alina Popa doing the wrap up, and literally beckoning me to women's bodybuilding.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how much that meant to me for such legends in the sport to say, she's got what it takes, she's got the package, she's got the presentation, she's got the structure. We'll just bring this up, just give me that critical feedback. And it just meant so much to me. I said, that's all I needed. That's the green.
Yeah.
It's game over. Green light.
Let's be real.
Like, who would
That's
say no?
exciting.
Who says no to that?
Yeah.
So, in addition to a couple of my friends who were also sort of pushing me, that Margie Martin had been in my ear
Yes.
saying, girl, you already know this is where you got to be. You already know this is, I'm going to let you play around.
You play around over there.
So it just goes to show you what it means to have people in your corner and supportive people in your corner, and people who know what they're doing, and people who have had their years and their reps. You've gotten that experience. So I took that and ran with it, and we prepped full on for 2021 for women's bodybuilding. And I said, I'm doing the Chicago Pro.
Yes.
That was going to be my first show. And when I stepped onto that Chicago Pro stage, and they didn't move me from the center,
He's like,
for it to be just a year removed,
Right.
and to get that call out by Steve Weinberger,
Yes.
dead center, holding down the
Yes.
center square, it just literally brought so much happiness and gratitude into my, I was this overwhelmed. I was filled to the brim with, feeling fulfilled, feeling successful, feeling grateful, in addition to everything that had been happening in my life. My mom was sick. The family situation was crazy. There was a lot of things happening with the nonprofit organization that she runs. People don't know the behind the scenes things of competitors.
Yeah, so tell us about that, because I do know that year, you talked about your mom and caring for her, and you had all of that on your plate, and with that victory, she's well. And
no, I dedicated that show, that prep, that victory to my mom because of what a soldier she is, of what a fighter she is. She's always been just an amazing person as an individual. I mean, I think a lot of people, we don't see our parents as human beings until maybe later in life.
Sure, yes.
We see our parents as these superheroes or these people that can do no wrong, or they're just they're parents.
Yeah.
They're not people,
Yeah.
And so to see my mom as a human being with emotions and feelings and ideas and wants and desires and things like that, it didn't happen until I was older. I was out of college.
Yeah.
And to see her struggling through this health issue. Unfortunately, she was battling stage 4 liver failure. It was end stage liver failure.
Intense,
and it got to the point where she was so depleted. She didn't have any energy. She was 94 pounds. She wasn't eating. I struggled a lot between going to the gym, taking that time away from being with my mom for this thing, and there's no guarantee that I'm going to win. There's no guarantee that it's going to be financially feasible. There's no guarantee that it's going to give anything back to me. It's I felt selfish, and it was just difficult for me to balance that. But my mom was steadfast, and she wouldn't let me not go. She wouldn't let me not go to the gym. She wouldn't let me miss a workout or miss the meal prep or anything. And it got to the point where, thank God, she got the call for the liver transplant, and it was June 25th last year. July 23rd, a solid 4 weeks later, I was in Atlanta for the Chicago Pro, and there were just so many emotions running through me to have to leave her. And
so she gets the transplant on
June
25th,
June 25th,
and then you go in 3 weeks later.
3 weeks later to Atlanta, and she was she wasn't worried about herself. It was, all right, babe, like, all right, honey, have
Focused
fun.
on you.
Yeah, just like go do it. Bring back that win. And my mom's never been that person that's like, you gotta win, you gotta win. It's like, do your best.
Yeah.
Do your best, have a good time. Somebody's gotta win. It's not always gonna be you, but have a good time.
Right.
Put your best effort. And so for me to get that call out at the end, for them to call my name at the end as taking first place as the champion of the of the Chicago Pro, I was just overwhelmed with emotion, and I don't typically think of myself as a crier.
But emotions, that's deep.
But Andrea Shaw like hugged me as they're like putting the crown on me, and she like hugs me and she's like, congratulations, girl, you're home. Like bawling into her hair. Like, I'm so sorry. And like, oh my God, I don't want my makeup to run. So I'm like, hold on to I'm like, don't let go. Like,
wow.
Fixing my eyelashes, you know. But it was just an amazing experience. And it was, you know, it was just, I couldn't have written it any better if I was writing it myself, you know. So the whole journey in and of itself, from a high school athlete, being, you know, a youth athlete, to college, and then figuring out my own life, like what I'm doing, you know, to be an individual person, my career, personal training, to now, you know, as a bodybuilder, being a competitive bodybuilder, and having to juggle, taking care of my mom, which, by the way, she's doing so much better these days.
Oh, good. Yes.
She's so much stronger. You know, she can get up and down the steps on her own. She doesn't need 24/7 care. She's not in so much pain. You know, there's still a long road ahead of us, but, you know, it's so much better. You know, and to even have to change careers, because I had to give up like personal training in order to take care of her, but also to run her nonprofit, because, you know, her mission in life is substance abuse recovery and mental health counseling. So that nonprofit agency is her baby, and we were not going to let that, you know, that die or filter off. So
it was such an amazing story, and we're going to take a break and come back and find out what you have planned this year. All right, we'll be back. We're back with Sheena Ohlig, and we left off talking about how you got through the whole, like, just all the wonderful things that happened. Your mom's success, and with her illness, and as well as you winning the Chicago Pro in 2021. So, talk a little bit more about that, because I think that, you know, people out there always think they see you on stage and they think everything's perfect.
You're happy, you're
like
fine.
You had no hurdles, you know, you had no distractions. People say, well, I have my kid's birthday, or my mother got sick, or I got a cold. There's always something, right? And we all experience that. So that, for you to walk through that, and like you said, not knowing, like, will this be financially rewarding? Like, why am I doing this? I should be at home with my mom. Like, tell us how you.
Well, I think for those of the audience that don't know, I mean, if you're not a competitor, it's actually a really big financial investment that you put into competing. So you put out a lot more than, unfortunately, at this point, especially for female competitors, than you even have a chance to get back. You're putting out for your meal prep, you know, buying your groceries, your gym memberships, your posing suit, your hair, your makeup, your
body work,
the body, body work. Thank you. Which, you know, and some people just won't do it. The supplements that you're like, people don't know how much protein powder and glutamine and the pre-workouts and all of that stuff really, and it does make an impact, you know. So just to prepare for a show is very expensive. But I think that, you know, when you're passionate about something, you make it work. So to go through all of that and be putting out more money than you can expect back, it is challenging. It is scary. But when you're driven by that passion, which I was at the time, you know, something that I was willing to take the risk on, because it was bodybuilding was something that I was passionate about, and I wanted to see, for nothing else, like not even for the win or for the championship, but I wanted to see where I could put my body. I wanted to see how well I could develop my body, you know, to my greatest ability. You know, so that makes a big impact in the drive. And then, you know, you also have your emotional, social, emotional, career, all of those things. So when people look at bodybuilders, men or women, and they think that it's just this, you know, this easy ride, all you have to do is go to the gym. Oh, of course you look like that. You just go to the gym for 4 hours a day. Yes, but I'm waking up at 3:30 in the morning so that I get to the gym by 4:30 so that I can get my workout done and get home and pack my meals, and then I can get off to work because I still have a day job.
Right.
You know, you have, I mean, we have surgeons, we have lawyers, we have judges, we have people with true careers. They still have to balance all that with families, with kids, single parents, you know, so there's a lot that goes into it. It's definitely not an easy ride unless you have a really big sponsorship with a really big company and they're giving you, you know, they're paying you out each month. Like,
which doesn't seem to be the case these days.
It doesn't seem to be the case anymore. No. And I think that has a lot to do with social media, but I think that's a whole nother
that's a whole nother animal.
That's a whole nother discussion for sure. So yeah, I think that at the end of the day, it's about mindset, because you can't count on those intangibles, those things that you really don't have any control over, as your motivation. So, you know, thankfully from my years as a yoga instructor, I was able to condition myself to be able to accept what I can accept or control what I can control, and like let go of expectations of things in order to not suffer through the prep. You know what I mean? Because I think that we wind up holding on to these expectations of what this prep will do or the outcome of the prep. And then you wind up suffering through that because it doesn't work out that way. Or you miss out on the experience of learning all that you can learn from that prep.
You're focusing on the end.
You're just focusing on the end, and there's so much more in between that time that you could learn and utilize for future preps. But at the end, if it turns out that you don't win, it feels, for some people, it could feel like a complete failure.
For sure.
And it doesn't always have to be that way. You know?
And this is just so cool, because it's like, this is about enjoying the journey. And that's the first thing, like I said, thinking about you, it's just, I see the inner self. I see that you're centered and at peace, and I see that you're aligned, and that, you know, I mean, because the people come and then they have these beautiful bodies, beautiful physiques, they're on stage, everybody's happy pretty much prior to, and then they have the first call out, and they're not in the first call out, and then it's
their
like
whole
this,
mood
their whole world changes, and you just have to find a way to enjoy the journey. And we had that a conversation about your experience as a yoga instructor, and how you learned and understand the importance of meditation and, you know, what's going on inside. So I think that's like, for you to share that with the audience.
It's been super helpful, 100%. I mean, if there's one thing that I could recommend for anyone, it's, you know, you may not necessarily be into the yoga practice, but a meditative practice. And a meditative practice doesn't necessarily have to be sitting still and closing your eyes and, you know, humming. A lot of times, for a long time, my gym workouts were my meditative practice. I'd go in, I'd close everything out, my headphones are on, nobody could get into my area or my space, and that was my meditative practice. But then I did discover yoga, and I did discover, you know, that inner dialogue with yourself that you can really use to change the way that you perceive things around you, and change the way that you respond to things, and you're not so reactionary necessarily, or blaming things on other people or other things. It's really just accepting things as they are. While still having goals. I think you have to have goals, for sure.
Absolutely.
Like, you can't just like blindly be like, oh, that's just how it is. But I think you focus, and I think you alleviate a lot of stress and I don't know, a lot of stress and suffering when you can allow yourself to be in that place. So I definitely recommend a meditative practice. Definitely recommend a yoga practice. I definitely grew from my yoga practice. I used to be a little bit of a hot button, a little, you know, firecracker, like reactionary. I'm not, you know, I'm still working on the you know, the.
Nobody's perfect. It's okay.
I'm still working on, you know, I get like that road rage every now and then.
Yeah, that happens.
Like that's the only place. It's like in the car is the only place where I like break out, you know. So it's cool. But I think the one thing that carries over from my yoga practice for sure, and it's something that I learned from one of my first mentors, is the way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're out of alignment in one area of your life,
Yes.
you're out of alignment in every area of your life. So it can't just be this one place where you do everything perfectly, because if you're slacking on your sleep, if you're slacking on, you know, connecting with your friends, if you're slacking on those things, that's going to carry over.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a slack in everything else. So the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And that does help me in my prep, you know, my diet, my cardio, my training, my practicing of my poses, all of that. It does help for sure.
Girl, you're going to go far, far,
Yes.
I hope so.
Mindset. There's a lot people can learn from you and your mindset and the way you approach the shows.
Thank you so much. I hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
No reason why. If you guys have the opportunity to meet her, make sure you're going to feel this energy. Oh, yeah. And then you guys can dance together.
We will definitely dance together. And I'm on TikTok, so follow me on TikTok.
Yes. All right, so next time I see you backstage, we're dancing, girl.
We're doing a TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Deal.
You know it.
Deal.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sheena, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And
This is so
sharing
fun.
your courage and your inspiration. And guys, you just heard it from the best. Really, as far as just like your energy, your mindset, and at the end of the day, enjoy the journey. All right, guys, we'll see you again on another episode of FemFlex Friday.